Scap, you like bad mouthing LeBron? Go ahead.
LeBron comes along, and now for the first time in the sport's really modern history since that 76 merger, we have a guy who has presided over the decline of the sport. He's going to leave it in exponentially worse situation than when he received it. And it really just does have to do with his lack of desire to compete like all the other guys that came before him. Somewhere along the line, though, Jason, these players stopped caring about playing defense. Viewership in the NBA this year as compared to 12 years ago, so that's the 2012 season, is down 48%, while it is down a staggering 25%, Jason, from just last season. So based on this time last year, the league is seeing 25% reduction in viewership over its four principal platforms, which is ESPN, ABC, TNT, and NBA TV. So 25% less from just last year. And to put that figure in full context, over those four platforms right now, at the quarter point of this NBA season, NBA games are generating 1.4 million views per game. Okay, the WNBA this season, over those overlapping platforms, when you look at their regular season and postseason, averaged 1.2 million per game. Jason, when the WNBA is closing in on the NBA in terms of viewership, Houston, we have a problem. And again, it's for some reason the three-point line, which everyone's fixating on. And there is, without a doubt, a lot of three-point shooting going on. It's up to almost 38 shots a night, which is 3 more than last year. It's 15 more than 10 years ago. But at its core, at the heart, the NBA has a competition problem. The league itself has de-incentivized competing, and the greatest players of the era, starting around the 2010-2011 season and onward, just stopped wanting to compete overall to win anything. They started joining each other in the offseason, building super teams, becoming best friends with each other, making a lot more money, by the way, Jason, fully guaranteed. And they just stopped caring about playing games and competing and trying hard on a nightly basis. It's a fundamental issue at its core of competition. It started years ago. There's no easy fix. It's not an easy answer, but this didn't just happen overnight. We've been coming to this point for about 10 to 15 years now.
Scap, it sounds like you're pointing a finger at LeBron James. He would be something happened in 2009 or 10, I believe, where he made the decision to head down to Miami. And that you're saying is the breaking point where it became less about competition and more about, because competition is different than chasing rings. And it became more about chasing rings than competing. Is that your argument?
He's certainly part of the equation and a very large part, Jason, but it did start in the league offices somewhere around 2004. They just started litigating out defense. And, just to take you on a quick trip, I would like to touch on LeBron at some point because I think he is part of the major issue, which is kind of hilarious, ironic, and hypocritical that he's now talking about the problems. You played that bite in your open. He's talking about the problems and how the NBA has a lot of issues. He's a major part of the issues, but it started even before him. If you go back to 1995-96 season, that was, as many people will remember, the 72-10 run by the Chicago Bulls, that famed 72-win season where Jordan won his 4th league MVP. The Chicago Bulls won the 4th NBA championship. But something else happened that year that didn't happen for the first time, and it was like 40 years. For the first time since 1956, in the 95-96 season, league-wide scoring averages dipped below 100 points per game for league-wide averages. And there was just this decade-long shift where scoring floated around the mid-90s, and the NBA thought that it was an eyesore. They thought that they needed to do something to enhance offense and get scoring up. And this was despite, Jason, the NBA being in its golden era in terms of popularity and viewership. As scoring was plummeting, viewership was soaring. As you can see in the NBA Finals, every year was around 20 million viewers per game in the finals. And that peaked out in the 1998 finals with Jordan, where that got 30 million viewers a night on average for that 6-game series, including 36 million views in Game 6, which is still to this day the highest watched basketball game ever recorded. Now, it got even worse throughout the early 2000s. Scoring dipped to 93 in 2004, and the league absolutely panicked and lost their mind, and they eradicated hand checking, and this era of lack of defense was initiated in 2004. But they still were defending in the league because those players that were in the league at that time had that defensive mindset and ideology. The greatest players at that time were defending. Kobe Bryant, Kevin Garnett, Tim Duncan. They weren't just the best defensive players in the league at that time. They're some of the best defenders ever at their positions. They stopped wanting to compete on that end. We've swelled now. We're in the mid 100s. We're like 114 a game right now, scoring average right now. It's 20 points higher than back then. And even back then, when the NBA thought they had this big point scoring problem, in the 2004 finals, that was still 18 million people tuned in a night to watch that series. And it was over 20 million views per game for the last two. Geez, we're at like 10 million viewers a night in the NBA Finals right now. It's an abysmal product, and it's not about the lack of talent. JJ, I saw you play, is talking about lack of talent. It's about a lack of will and desire to compete defensively. LeBron, though, elevated the lack of desire to compete when he came along and took his talents to South Beach. But I don't know, do you want to unpack some of this defensive conversation, or do you want to dig in really into LeBron James and the Pied Piper that he's been to lead the other greats of his era to do the same damn thing, which is just join forces and not want to win challenging actual titles? The modern era of the NBA as we know it, the merger occurred ABA-NBA in 1976. The 70s were viewed as kind of like a dark age of NBA basketball. In the 1979-1980 season, we get Irvin Magic Johnson and Larry Bird. The two of these guys unite to absolutely salvage the NBA. Hell, maybe basketball as a whole. They uplift the entire product of the NBA, and then in comes Michael Jeffrey Jordan in 1984, and he just ratchets us up to another even higher level that was really couldn't even be anticipated at that time, into that mid-90s era where you get 25, 30 million people a night watching NBA Finals games. He kind of seeded the way, handed it over to Kobe Bryant, I think, took the reins at some point. Whatever year you want to argue that transition took place, whether Kobe really became the best player